Georgia Tech won the Orange Bowl, but don't figure to win any recruiting rankings wars with anyone, either in-state, meaning the Bulldogs, or in the ACC. But as long as they win on the field, that, of course, is what matters. We bring in Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat on the SB Nation platform to talk some Georgia Tech football with National Signing Day less than a week away. Georgia Tech, right now, number 36, according to Rivals.com, number 40, according to 24/7 Composite. Joey, of course, thanks so much for joining us. We'd like to get your take on this recruiting class. But before we dive into the personnel, I know you've got a number of oddities that are pretty rare for this particular class.
Yeah, been an interesting recruiting cycle. I think one of the first things that pops out is that Brandon Singleton was a wide receiver who was committed a long time, just decommitted about a week ago, ends up committing to Cal shortly thereafter. But he was actually the very first decommitment of this class. Nobody has flipped, and only he has dropped. I think it's a pretty amazing feat for the coaching staff as well as for the recruiting staff, especially given that a couple years ago you had about half the class drop out within a couple weeks of signing day, and so certainly an amazing accomplishment that way. All that, not to mention that this is the second year in a row they've had a set of twins. Last year they had Lance and Lawrence Austin. This year they've got Scott and Brad Morgan. Just something very interesting to see. They've got 3 legacy commitments: Tyler Cooksey, son of Tom, Kyle Henderson, and then they've also got got another one. Anyways, so interesting stuff going on there. They've had 4 early enrollees, and one of them was very interesting. Will Bryan, his dad played football at Georgia, and was a major Georgia supporter, hated everything about Georgia Tech, and then it's time for Will to start taking visits and decides, oh yeah, I guess we'll just go see what they've got to offer there. Next thing you know, he's firmly in Georgia Tech's corner and very supportive of the program and of Will going there. And Will's older brother has started playing baseball at Georgia and has since transferred to Georgia Tech. So a very interesting transformation within that family as well. So certainly a very unique recruiting class, a pretty major turnaround from what we've seen a couple of years ago when there were flips and decommitments and all sorts of nonsense going on there.
So, Joey, when you can get a flip, that's one thing, but when you can get a flip from Georgia, that's special. When you can get them flipping from the Bulldogs to the Yellow Jackets, and you mentioned a number of family connections that'll be interesting to trace in a number of directions. Let's look at this football team right now. What do you consider to be the big needs on this team that just won the Orange Bowl?
So the biggest need on offense, probably going to be 2 of them, is going to be wide receiver and B-back. B-back, they had 3 scholarship seniors graduate. They returned no snaps at that position. Wide receiver, you lost both your starters, DeAndre Smelter and Darren Waller. Michael Summers has some experience, should be able to pick up some slack there, but the question is then, after him, is it Ricky June? Is it Antonio Messick? One of the younger guys, we'll have to see. So that's where you're going to find your needs on offense for the most part, as well as you're going to see some at A-back as well. They returned Dennis Andrews and Broderick Snoddy, who are likely starters. But after that, it's going to be a lot of guys who maybe haven't seen as much time on the field or are a little younger, a little less experienced. So a little bit of reloading needs to be done on that side of the ball. On defense, don't really lose a whole lot, but the biggest thing that we're looking to kind of beef up on is going to be the defensive line. They had quite a few problems getting pushed around, especially in run support at times this year. So going to be important to try and get a couple guys back that were either injured or suspended, and try and get some experience for young guys and get some more production out of that group moving forward.
Joey Weaver joins us from the Rumble seat on the SB Nation platform for Georgia Tech Athletics. 25 commits to date. Joey, who are some of those guys that you're a little bit more excited about at this point?
Yeah, so the aforementioned Will Bryan has great film coming out of high school. He looked really, really good as an offensive lineman. You had A.J. Gray, who was a quarterback and safety at Washington County, and he was the Georgia State Player of the Year, set some records, and just had an outstanding season. Recently got a commitment from Henri St. Amour. He's from the northeast Atlanta area, Gwinnett County, where Ted Roof is from, actually, and he looks to be a pretty nasty defensive end, a really good pass rusher, and very quick in the backfield. So he looks like a lot of fun. You got Christian Campbell is a wide receiver, quarterback type of prospect out of Louisiana. Going to be interesting to see where he ends up. He's certainly going to start at quarterback, but there might be potential to move down the line. Again, Tyler Cooksey, a linebacker out of Atlanta, pretty highly rated, really good film. Can kind of do it all usually from the middle linebacker spot, both run and pass defense. Does a really nice job. And then the main running back commit was Mikell Davis. Came out of the Metro Atlanta area as well. It's kind of a middle 3-star ranking, but Georgia Tech really liked him, really liked his film. They showed him early on that he was their #1 prospect. Looks like a pretty complete running back, and so, like you mentioned, the ranking of the class is not particularly high, and yet there are a lot of Tech fans that kind of see that and brush it off and know that there are some really, really good players in this class, and there's a lot of excitement around it, probably as much as there has been in the Johnson era around a recruiting class.
So you talk about the big commits to date. Are there a few guys out there that are looking at Tech, but they're also on the fence looking at a few other schools that you would really love to see come to Georgia Tech?
I think the main one remaining is Victor Alexander. He's a linebacker from Tampa, I think, certainly from Central Florida. He's currently committed to UCLA. He's a 3-star linebacker, but has shown some interest in Georgia Tech as well as Virginia Tech, I believe. And he took his first visit out to UCLA a couple weeks ago, and he's actually visiting Georgia Tech this weekend, the final weekend before signing day. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens while he's in Atlanta, to see if they can get him flipped, or if he sticks with UCLA, or even somehow finds a way to end up at Virginia Tech.
I have little idea what Georgia Tech has ranked in the recruiting rankings going through the years, but I can't expect it's been much higher than 25. It's probably more in that 30 to 45 range. So you just mentioned 36 and 40, not alarming, not a big deal, not just for you, but Georgia Tech fans. It sounds like Georgia Tech fans are used to not being overly impressive in the recruiting rankings, but still turning those teams into postseason teams with 8, 9, or 11 wins like last year.
Exactly, yeah, and it's certainly in past seasons been a point of contention of people feeling like the recruiting rankings should be higher than it is, thinking players weren't rated properly, other people thinking that maybe the staff just isn't doing a great job of attracting stars. But I think what we've seen in the last couple of years, when people are really starting to gain confidence in, is the ability of this staff to evaluate talent. What Rivals thinks of them, the staff really doesn't really care. They go watch them in games, they bring them in for camps, and they figure out what they think of them, of these players, and that's really what kind of matters to them. And again, where you've seen some of these low to mid 3-star players come in, Rivals doesn't think maybe too much of them, scout 24/7, whatever it might be, but the coaches have seen something different from them, and they really like what they see. And I think that's one of the interesting things about this class, is that only a few of these commitments really have come in the last month or two. They have established this class early on. They went out and they found the players that they liked, and they brought them in and they got them. And as has been a tradition the last few years, down the stretch, these guys have occasionally been approached by other teams, but Georgia Tech was smart enough to evaluate them early and get them locked up before that was ever going to be a problem.
We always seem to be looking ahead, whether it be the game preview, recruiting, National Signing Day. I don't believe we've spoken since we previewed the Orange Bowl. So I'd like to get your take on the Orange Bowl, and you got to be pretty pumped. Again, my recollection, not nearly as good as you, but I got to think that this might be the high point for Georgia Tech football since you've been watching.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. The only season that might compare is the 2009 season when they won the ACC championship, but that was also a season where they lost to Georgia and they lost in the Orange Bowl. This one, I think, is a pretty clear best season of Paul Johnson's tenure. It's great. It's a great feeling coming off of it. They finished with a win over Clemson, a win over Georgia, a very near miss against a near flawless Florida State team, and a major win in the Orange Bowl over Mississippi State. And it was a very convincing one, I would say. They were running the football at will, especially after halftime, and the Bulldogs got the benefit of the doubt on a couple of different calls by the referees that I think kind of kept them in it. They were overturned a fumble, got a penalty here or something. And Georgia Tech won by 15, and it really could have been more than that. And so I think it was a very impressive showing on a national stage. They got a lot of positive attention after that. People were pretty wowed by Justin Thomas, who's probably was healthier than he had been in a while, and so it was a really great night. I really enjoyed watching it, and they really put on a show. And it's nice knowing that they don't stand to lose a whole lot of guys off that team going forward to maybe make it a little, maybe not easier, but a little more likely that they do it again.
Yeah, and I was borderline shocked. Not that they won the game, but again, the score was not indicative of how much Georgia Tech dominated that particular game. And unless you're Ohio State, the run to close the season is about as good as it gets, the one you just mentioned, in losing just the close game to Florida State, Clemson, Georgia, and the Orange Bowl against Mississippi State. Mighty impressive for Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech. So, Joey, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, always a pleasure to be on.